So what we're set up to tie here is a little attractor nymph I like to call the flashbang. And it's a pretty simple fly, but it's extremely effective. What we're going to need today are some Dairiki 125 size 12s, some tungsten beads, 7/64 will match this pretty well, some ultra wire small silver, hollow tinsel medium red, some mirage tinsel large, some Goose Biots, and the other magic material we're going to need here today is a little bit of ice dub peacock. So to start out with, go ahead and bead your hook. Like I said, we like to do this beforehand. Thread we're going to be using today is a red Unithread 6/0, and you can start this thread maybe about a fifth of the way behind the bead on the hook here, and we're going to take that thread, lay down a nice base layer, and we're going to keep taking this back on the bend here until we're about halfway down this back bend. That's going to be the point we're going to tie in our Biots here. So rusty brown Goose Biots. And I like to tie these in a little bit shorter than normal. Normally you would have a full shank length in here, but I like to go a little less than a shank length on mine. Drop your one in on the opposite side here. This is where having a good soft loop technique really comes in handy. Get those right opposite one another. Kind of go in there, make sure that thing splits out. Then you'll need your piece of silver wire next. I just like to situate that wire right in between the two Goose Biots. Come right in there, make a few wraps, put your wire in. Next you'll use that red hollow tinsel. And this red is just a beautiful color and absolutely gets hammered by fish in the spring and summertime. This is basically like a red lightning bug is what we're tying up here, tied on a scud hook. So you come in now, and I like to simply come right down along here and tie right over top of those Biots. Tie up right to where we tied our thread in. This is where I'm leaving this open on purpose here. Give ourselves a little bit of room to tie in the thorax. So next step here is to drop a little bit of Flex Seal on top of this thread. And what this does, this just helps kind of make the bug a little bit more durable and gives you something to wrap that hollow tinsel down into. Really adds some durability to the fly here. So we're coming in, we're making one wrap. It's not necessarily right next to the other, almost right on top of the last one, so that you're not missing any spaces in here. You're kind of trying to cover up that whole body. Once you do, hit that with your tie-off point again, right up here where we're leaving some room for our thorax. And that's a common mistake of beginner tiers, is crowding the head. So if you start spacing things out prior to, you'll have a lot easier time with doing this. Now, up until this point, we've been wrapping all of our materials away from us. Now we're going to come in with the wire, and we're going to do a reverse rib here. That's what we call this, and we wrap the wire back towards us. And this is a pretty open wrap that we're doing here on this. Try to space it fairly evenly. That's just an aesthetic thing. It doesn't really matter for the fish. But then what I like to do here is come in and make your wraps of this wire right up to the bead. And we're simply going to wiggle that wire right off. No need to trim that, ruin scissors, or do anything. Now at this point, we're going to need that large flashback tinsel. I'm going to come in, tie this piece down. As we tie it back, we're going to keep going almost to the point where you're wrapping back and over that body that you just created. And you can leave this hanging out of the back. Next step here is going to be your dubbing loop. Now the tool we're using here is a dub it tool. And I'm not a big fan of a lot of different fancy tools, but the dub it tool is the one tool I think that is a must for any tire. Next we're going to get a little bit of this hairy ice dub peacock, and we just kind of pull out these fibers, kind of stretch them out so that they're all spaced out, and then we're going to load those up and into our dubbing loop. Make a couple of turns on that dubbing loop, pinch off a little bit more of this stuff here. And the key here is to not use too much. If you get too much, you will not get the wispy kind of soft hackled effect that you're looking for here with the dubbing loop. So once we get that loaded in there, I'll go ahead and spin that up a little bit with my dubbing loop here, and then just kind of press up and down on that thread. That'll really flare out all that hair that you have now. And the next step is to take, you want to make sure that this dubbing is wrapped right up against the back of where your body was. I'm just going to bring that forward. If you got a little bit too much, that's okay. You can just simply tie that stuff off right behind the bead here. Once you got that tied off, last step on this pattern is to just simply bring this flash back right up and over the top. The way I like to do this is do 3 or 4 wraps, get that sucked under the bead, then pull this flashback back on top of itself, make a few wraps, then trim. Now you're certain that stuff is tied in. Last step here, you're simply going to go in, whip finish, trim out. And you can do this with your hands, or if you want to, you can get yourself a dubbing brush and really brush that hair out on this. But what we've got now here is a little flash bang. Variegate the colors, try different things, put a soft hackle on the front of this, whatever you want to do, but this is a highly effective pattern for self